A large part of the reason I'm doing this series is because for many years I was what you might call an insufferable music snob. For real. I had some very clear ideas about what music should be, and I didn't have much time or patience for anything that fell short in my eyes. So I spent my time trying to become a
serious musician.
learning as much as I could about jazz and fusion and prog and blues and music history. I just dismissed out of hand large sections of influential and important music. And that includes an awful lot of punk. In college, I had friends who were into the Dead Kennedys, Black Flag, and Fugazi, so I heard a lot of their music just by hanging out with my friends. In addition, out of curiosity, I got myself a copy of Nevermind the Bollocks, which I only played enough to know the songs. At the time, that was all I needed to convince myself that I knew punk as a genre. It was also all I needed to feel justified in dismissing most of it as angry teenage tantrum rock. Like I said, insufferable music snob. As for The Clash in particular, Should I Stay or Should I Go, Train in Vain, Rock the Casbah, until now, that was the entirety of my knowledge of their music. I also knew Joe Strummer died too young. Same age I am now, actually. Giving an open and honest listen to this music was, I knew, going to be a challenge for me. For starters, I have decades of assumptions to overcome. Also, it's entirely possible that I'm just too much part of the establishment to be able to grok revolution rock in fullness. While having an 18-year-old daughter help? Maybe? I hope? Let's find out. Listening to London Calling for the first time, it became clear to me that my assumptions about what I would encounter were just wrong. While every song has high amounts of anger and snark, one or the other or both, the music is by no means a one-note affair. There's rockabilly, lounge jazz, ska, new wave, reggae, even a skiffle tune. And beyond just guitar, bass, drums, there's piano, horns, percussion, organ, and the arrangements range from sparse to quite lush. All in all, this is a much more involved and diverse collection of songs than I had any way of expecting. A few things I noticed the first few times through. The riff in Brand New Cadillac is almost identical to the riff in the original version of Venus by Shocking Blue. Hateful is pretty much a Bo Diddley song about drugs. Paul Simonon's vocal delivery on The Guns of Brixton remind me a lot of Chris Difford's vocals on Squeeze's Cool for Cats, which was also released in 1979. Incidentally, Cool for Cats is another example of my music snobbery keeping me from getting into a song at first. Since then, though, I've really come to love it. Wrong'em Boyo is probably the one that got stuck in my head the most frequently while I was learning the album. It's funny how I always seem to gravitate towards the covers, even when I don't know at first that they're covers. I'm not sure entirely what that means. Maybe it's just because they're different enough from the original tracks that they stand out. In any case, I think it's also just because I like the phrase Wrong'em Boyo. Now I want to take a minute to talk about one song in particular that turned out to be complicated for me to come to terms with. Jimmy Jazz. On one hand, it's clearly the band demonstrating an absolute contempt for Jazz, and that definitely rubs me the wrong way. The most charitable way I can interpret what I hear in this song is to assume that they're aiming specifically at the kind of empty lounge jazz that might have been heard in nightclubs in Britain at the time. The same kind of thing you see parodied in The Young Ones and French and Saunders. Dudes in burgundy polyester suits with bow ties, sunglasses, and sideburns singing My Way to a dinner crowd. If that's what this song's about, then I think I'm okay with that. It's cultural commentary. On the other hand, something that makes me smile about Jimmy Jazz is the fact that I have very fond memories of seeing my friends in Tallahassee band Frankenfinger play their original song Minuet. And Jimmy Jazz sounds enough like Minuet for it to make me happy. I'm probably the only person on planet Earth that feels that way, and I'm okay with that too. Going back to the album as a whole, I admit it took me quite a few listens to get myself attuned to London Calling's landscape, but I got there eventually, and I'll have a lot of thoughts about it, so I guess let's get stuck in. Let me talk about the strictly musical aspects first. Musically, the thing that interests me most about this album is how the Clash's consistency leads to a relatively uneven album. And I know that sounds like a contradiction, but I think it can explain. On the rock tunes, on the hard tunes like Clapdown or Death or Glory, Train in Vain, and the title track, the band is clearly doing what they do well. The energy is high and the songs come across. But it seems to me that when they have to stretch themselves to get more complicated or just further away from those rock roots, like the 50s girl group type arrangement in The Card Cheat, or the new wave pop style modulations in Spanish Bombs, then those no-nonsense rock chops that work so well on some tunes tend to make their attempts at nuance and diversity sound kind of ham-handed and forced to me. Lyrically, there's a common thread, but it goes many places. The anti-corporate and anti-establishment songs like Coca-Cola and Clampdown are written powerfully. The more personal songs like Lost in the Supermarket and I'm Not Down are raw without being maudlin. Even the songs that at first listen I found myself questioning why they would be there in the first place, like The Right Profile, well, they come into sharper focus when you realize what's implied. In that case, the story was that Montgomery Clift's drinking amounted to a long suicide. Taken as a whole, it's more than apparent that there are many layers to London Calling. Even the title London Calling is superficially a reference to BBC News announcers while simultaneously acting as a thesis statement for the rest of the album. I mean, I'm not British, nor have I ever lived in Britain, but I have spent years consuming all manner of British media, and the impression that I get is that there was a pervasive sense of powerlessness and disenfranchisement felt by the younger generation when Thatcher assumed the office of the Prime Minister in 1979. And that's absolutely consistent with what I hear in these 19 songs. So I guess to force an analogy, if Sgt. Pepper's was a slice of English life in 1967, then yeah, London Calling I can definitely see as the same in 1979. The thing is, though, a lot of it was ugly and mean and cruel. A lot of it wasn't so much about establishing a position, but rather was simply extending a middle finger to an existing one. And when your artistic statement is like, I hate and I hate all that stands for, well, by necessity, as soon as is no longer relevant, then neither is your art. It dies the same death as the thing you fought so hard to take down. So I think I understand London Calling, at least as best as I'm able. I might even appreciate it. I just don't think I like it very much.